And it's time now for The Clash. The Prime Minister has until December the 18th to decide whether or not to cancel Christmas again and cause a second consecutive year of festive heartbreak. Given the anger sparked by the hell that was Tier 4 last year, Boris is reportedly determined to confirm that Christmas is on early next week, despite fears about the Omicron variant. But the likes of nerve tag scientist Professor Peter Openshaw, who claimed that the chances of getting infected were too high to host festive get-togethers, have been planting scaremongering little seeds, while the mainstream media have been using any and every opportunity to browbeat the PM into calling a lockdown. Yes, I'm looking at you, BBC. It's perhaps no surprise, then, that folk like the TV personality Denise Welsh have had enough of this constant toying with our freedoms. She tweeted this weekend, "Never again will anyone try keep me from those I love, especially those in charge who have broken every single rule they forced us to obey." So will you comply if the government tries to cancel or restrict Christmas for a second year in a row? You can vote in my Twitter poll at GBNews, and remember to email me too your views, dan@gbnews.uk. But to debate this now, I'm joined by Denise's Loose Women co-star, columnist and broadcaster Carol McGiffin. Carol, hello. You may have already won this clash, by the way, because we were meant to have you up against Paul Connew, the Sunday Mirror editor, and he seems to have run away in fear. And Carol, obviously I agree with you. This concept...
Scaredy cat.
Exactly. But it's just insane, isn't it? This idea that for a second year in a row, that the population will even countenance Christmas being cancelled.
It makes me laugh, actually, Dan. It really does. It makes me laugh out loud when I see a little alert come up on my computer that says Boris will decide what we're allowed to do at Christmas on the 18th of December. And so, and the odd thing is, I know that some people are actually worried about that. And whether or not they will be allowed to go and see their loved ones. And I know people that are already cancelling arrangements in lieu of that announcement, just in case. And I find it absolutely heartbreaking. The actual arrogance of Boris Johnson and his government, for them to actually say out loud, we will decide what will happen at Christmas, whether or not you'll be allowed to go and mix with your loved ones again this year. And people, unfortunately, I don't know if they genuinely do, think it's a good idea. And this is off the back of a scariant variant that, when I last looked today, had 246 cases identified, nobody sick, nobody in hospital with it. And it's like, it's not justified, it's not necessary, and it's not going to happen in my book. I'm absolutely with Denise. It's not happening. I'm not listening now, and I won't listen then.
We have to change the language around this whole conversation. It actually makes my blood boil with rage when I keep seeing BBC broadcasters say things like, will Boris Johnson cancel Christmas? It's not his right to do so. And if we talk like that as if the bloke has the power to do that, we're turning the whole argument on its head. Last year was a one-off. I know you didn't agree, I didn't agree, but we went along with it. No more.
Yeah, it kind of legitimizes it, doesn't it, when organisations and other mainstream media like the BBC do sort of say, well, what's going to happen at Christmas? What's Boris going to decide? He has to lock down. We're heading for a fifth wave and all of this. And this is really bad for people, especially the ones that have been damaged by the government's programme of fear and propaganda and scaring them half to death, but with something that they really quite often don't need to be scared of at all. And for using that and making these people suffer with the uncertainty, with the fear, and with the possibility of having another miserable Christmas, it really is. It's damaging people's health. And then they turn around and say, well, we need to do this to protect the NHS. Excuse me? I mean, absolutely none of it makes sense. And I don't want to urge people to break the law, but the fact is this is not a problem. I really don't think this new variant that they're talking about is an actual big problem. Certainly not yet. Don't forget, the doctor that identified the virus in South Africa said the symptoms are mild and it's nothing to worry about. Everybody's overreacting. And then you look at our country and other countries around Europe, and they seem to take absolutely no notice of that and go the opposite direction and start acting like headless chickens.
I was literally about to use the phrase headless chicken, because if every time there's a new variant, we host a press conference, we terrify the population, we introduce new rules, we bring in mask mandates, we're never going to return to normal. And you do start to wonder, are there folk out there who never want normality back, and why? That's absolutely terrifying. So I agree with you on that, Carol, very much.
But the other thing is, Dan, the other thing that they used as a kind of nudge is these surveys that they keep putting out. And I don't know who they're asking, because they say, 99.9% of people want a permanent mask mandate. 99.9% of people want Christmas to be locked down for the new variant. And I don't know who they're asking, because I'm not really speaking to anybody. And I know a lot of people, and I have quite a few followers on Twitter as well, who I can't really see it. I can only see it from people who seem to be deliberately saying it, even though you kind of suspect they don't really believe it. And it's happening a lot, especially with big media figures, sort of trumpeting the government's propaganda and scaremongering deliberately, and using absolutely the same messages. It's almost like it's a coordinated plan to try and convince people that this is the right thing.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Carol, that you bring up this point about what we're allowed to say, because I want to be more open about that with our brilliant GB News viewers. I mean, right now, we can have this conversation because there is no law banning Christmas. But just say the government were to introduce a law on the 18th of December that banned Christmas, we would not be able to, under the law, under Ofcom regulations, to be able to come on this show and say, I will not comply. We also know that there's all of this public health diktat around Ofcom and their regulations, which the social media companies have very much bought into. And if you post anything about COVID, you'll see their little warnings that take you to official government messaging. So actually, it is hard to have these debates without being censored in this new world.
Yeah, it really is, actually. It's difficult to get the message out there. And quite often, I don't know if you feel this, but and I've been kind of saying this, trying to get the same message out there for almost 2 years now. And sometimes I feel like I'm just preaching to the converted, because the people who aren't listening are the people who don't want to listen and who will never listen. But I do feel, and I know I've said this before, but I do feel like there is a little bit of a groundswell at the moment of people beginning to wake up. And the last conversation I had with you was about, loads of people have had their 2 jabs. They thought that would be it and it would be over. And now it's a 3rd jab. And now you're not vaccinated unless you've had 3. You're being reclassified. And it's going on and on and on. And I think people are just tired. And in a way, I think, I don't want it to happen. Obviously, I don't. But I think if Boris did say, right, Christmas is off, it's cancelled, we're locking down, I do think there would be mass non-compliance. And if enough people do it, take no notice of those things. No, you're right. We wouldn't be able to say that if it did happen, but you could say it now. They can't lock everybody up, and they can't police the entire country. If everybody decides to just go, this is Christmas, it's my Christmas, it's not yours, you're not going to tell me what to do, and there's no way I'm not going to go and see my mum this year. I mean, it's absolutely insane if anybody's even thinking about that now.
Well, especially seeing it look like they were having all of these bashes at number 10 Downing Street last year. But look, Carol, Paul Conyers disappeared.
Good point.
We've got Albiam Ancona from our superstar panel. He is a member of the Conservative Party, Carol. and he thinks we're wrong. So, Albie, put the other side of the argument, please, because this is the clash, so we need both sides.
It is the clash, and we will clash, rather.
Oh, good.
Carol,
Good.
I've listened really carefully to what you have to say, and I feel a lot of sympathy with everything that you're saying. There is nothing more I want to do at Christmas than go and see my grandmother, Elizabeth. But the simple fact of the matter is we are still, unfortunately, living in the middle of a pandemic. And we have to take the world as it is, not as we would like to see it. And it's still unknown as to whether or not this variant evades vaccines or if the death rate is higher, although it doesn't look like the death rate is particularly higher. And we don't know whether or not, as I said before, it evades vaccines. So there's a lot of uncertainty with what this variant could do. And the simple fact of the matter is, Carol, if the facts change, and this vaccine does, if this variant does evade vaccines, then that really does change the situation. And if we suddenly see hospitalisations go up in the lead up to Christmas, when everyone wants to be with their families, and we're seeing operations having to be delayed even more so than they are now.
But, Carol, they are going to go up, aren't they? Because it's winter. They're going to go up.
Well, of course. Of course they're going to go up. Because they always do. And not necessarily because of this variant, and not necessarily because of anything to do with the pandemic that Albert claims that we're still in the middle of. I mean, it's just not true. People are getting sick. They're getting sick because they've been neglected for nearly 18 months, over 18 months. And if people are in hospital and the NHS gets overwhelmed, what's new? The NHS gets overwhelmed every single year. Probably last year was about the only year it wasn't completely overwhelmed. And they had the Nightingale hospitals, which you built in an emergency. No one went in them, and then you dismantled them. So, where are they now? If we've all got to stay at home and protect the NHS for something.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we can have a separate conversation about NHS reform. I've got a lot of opinions on that. But at the moment, we can't reform the NHS in 3 months before Christmas, which is what I was saying before. We've got to take the world as it is and not as we'd like to see it. And if the facts change significantly and this variant is more deadly and this variant evades our vaccines and we're essentially back to square one, then it gives me a very heavy heart to tell you
back to square one.
If that happens, but if it does happen, if we're talking about ifs here, if it does happen, we will probably, unfortunately, have to accept some more restrictions on our lives until new vaccines can be created to combat the new variant.
I won't.
That's just a practical situation.
And Carol, don't you just listen to Albie and just think what I think above everything else? Go and visit Elizabeth on Christmas Day, Albie.
I'd love to.
Just do it.
I hope I can.
Just do it.
Absolutely.
Just do it. And if you want to do a little lateral flow test just to be absolutely certain before you go, but do not let a government that's hosting parties at number 10 Downing Street in the middle of this pandemic tell you that you're not going to...
I can't defend that. I cannot defend that at all. I mean, if the allegations about the party are true, then I think that is
final word to you, Carol.
But one more thing, yes, we are at square one, Albie. We're still at square one. We've got absolutely nowhere. We're still where we started, and it's carrying on. This is nearly 2 years. In March, it will be 2 years. And there's already, rumours of the government saying, well, things might have to go on till next year, till March. That will be 2 years. That's too long.
Yeah, well, the law goes until March.
Yeah, exactly. We should be out of this by now. We should be living with it, and we should be accepting that there are viruses, there are variants, and some people catch them, and some people get sick, and some people don't. And don't even get me started on them evading vaccines.
Okay, I won't.
I can't do it because
I won't. You'll have a hernia. Carol McGiffin, stay calm. You know I love speaking to you. We'll see you in London very soon. And Albie Amankona, thank you for stepping into the breach at the last minute. He'll be back in our superstar panel very shortly. But who do you agree with? Bushra via Twitter says, everyone is doing Christmas. Nobody cares about their nonsense propaganda anymore. Season's greetings all. Dave adds, everyone voting no to complying on this poll is selfish. And Janice, via my email, says, Dan, I will not comply this Christmas. I am determined to go and get my mother, who is 93. She'll go crackers if she is alone again for another Christmas. We are all vaccinated and boosted. Your verdict now in. Just 9% of you with LB and saying they would comply if the government tries to cancel Christmas again, while 91% of you say you will not comply. I'm with you, and I'm allowed to say that for now.